It's good to connect, man. I'm looking forward to getting into it, and I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So, before we get into pack animals, I want to know this. 5 years ago, this pandemic was raging, changing everything, especially for musicians. How did you get through the pandemic of 2020, and how has it either influenced this animal or this project or what you're doing and how you're rolling as a musician these days?
Sure. Um, well, at the time, I was running a middle school band program in Brooklyn and teaching, not quite full time, but pretty close. So, although it definitely affected my playing and performing, like I had a monthly gig that ended, things like that. I experienced the pandemic, I'd say, primarily as a teacher, which was its own sort of beast. So at first, although I was concerned about, uh, the safety of everybody in the world, I was excited to be able to practice because I had 2 or 3 weeks off. So it was like, okay, no school for 2 weeks. Like, oh my God, I have this time to practice. And that was really exciting. So at first, I sort of dove into some projects, things that I hadn't touched in a long time, like a transcription project of this, sort of desert island Joe Henderson solo I've always loved. I thought, oh, if I have time, why not dive into something really challenging? Um, but then we started remote, teaching and having classes like this, and
Yep.
I had this whole new slew of challenges. I started this band program in Brownsville in Brooklyn in 2014, 2015. And, by the time the pandemic hit, it was pretty up and running, but we had to sort of reinvent everything because, how do you have an ensemble when everybody's on Zoom? Or, once we got back together, okay, how can brass and winds play together in the same room safely? So I'd say I experienced the pandemic at least the hardest parts of the pandemic for me were as a teacher. I still was able to make a living through my job as a teacher, so I wasn't affected financially in the same way a lot of my musician friends were. Uh, but that's how I experienced it, practically. My now wife, who was then my girlfriend, had just moved into my apartment a month before, and then the pandemic hit. So we got like a very uh, quick, quick taste of what it would be like to spend 24 hours together, because she was also, working from home, obviously. So, I was in New York City, which was an intense place to experience the pandemic, because, the situation was really dire there at first. And also just, it's so densely populated that it was like the pandemic on steroids
Yeah.
for a while there. But yeah, and then you asked about this project in particular.
Yeah, I mean it's your long-awaited debut. Talk to me a little bit about kind of the vision and what went into this, and possibly if living through that pandemic era influenced the artistic approach.
Well, it definitely influenced the three song suite, the 3 song cycle, which is kind of the heart of the album. Pack Animals, Orange Away, and Ceilings, which are three short pieces that I originally wrote for two trumpets and trombone. And I wrote those during the pandemic. So I wrote those in the summer of 2020. And uh, not originally as a jump off point for improvisers or for a jazz band, but I wrote it like as a chamber piece. And that was first played uh, like in a park in Brooklyn. I hired a couple of my friends, two trumpet players and a trombone player, to read through it outside, because we could only play outdoors at that point. And I got a recording of it. I heard it. I made a few revisions, and then I didn't touch it for a while. And then uh, I was about to turn 40. My band program, this was in like 2022, 2023. I was about to turn 40. My band program, school band program, was about to celebrate its 10th year anniversary. And my wife and I now had a baby on the way. So, I was doing a lot of reflecting about, okay, what what have I done up until this point, musically, professionally, and in New York, I always did a lot of performing and composing as much as I possibly could, especially once I started teaching more. But I hadn't done a proper studio recording. And I had a sort of book that I built up gradually of original compositions. And I had been doing the quartet thing pretty regularly for the past, 10, 15 years. And so I decided before my son was born, which was in August 23, I was going to lay down like a proper studio recording. So I spent that year sort of preparing for it, um, deciding which compositions I would record, sort of getting the band together for this project, and all the logistical stuff of reserving the studio and planning the release and all those things. But it was sort of not so much the pandemic; it was more my son being born, which I now say was like nature's greatest deadline. I was like, okay, my life is about to change completely. I gotta do this. So we recorded it, mixed it, mastered it, and then once he, was almost a year, then I really started to focus on the release.
So take me back to your beginnings in Massachusetts. How did music, how did jazz, how did this become your career and your life?
Sure. So growing up, I was primarily interested in sports, and I was really into baseball, and I was a pitcher, and I was passionate about that. I did that with my father. I also played basketball and football, but in fourth grade, when we all chose a band instrument, I was really drawn to the saxophone, and I was really into it, and I practiced a lot and progressed pretty quickly, and was definitely into it in fourth and fifth grade. In sixth, seventh grade, I almost quit because I was so bored by the sort of classical band approach. Although I had this wonderful teacher, and I actually sent her a copy of the album. I said thanks for helping me stick with it. I had a more traditional. She was a clarinet and saxophone teacher, but then she passed me on to her colleague, a woman named Negra Powell, at the All Newton Music School outside Boston, and she had gone to Berkeley. She had studied with, like great players in the Boston area. She was a real jazz player, and she made me a mixtape. I remember it was like Charlie Parker on one side of the cassette, Maceo Parker on the other side of the cassette, and like I was playing alto at the time, and so I was really into that. And she encouraged me to take solos, which I always loved doing. And then in high school, I did two things. I did, jazz combos and big band in high school, like a lot of people do, and we started doing the Essentially Ellington and all that. And then I had a wonderful private saxophone teacher, Philippe Chrétien, who is Boston-based, also went to Berkeley. He runs the Rivers Music School, which is in a different suburb of Boston, and he really helped me form like a lifelong bond with my heroes, like Sonny Rollins and John Coltrane and later Joe Henderson. And I was already listening to jazz and really enjoying it, which is obviously so important. But not every music student really enjoys listening to the music that they play or that they practice. I fortunately did, and he really helped me, get on that track. And then I injured my shoulder. I stopped pitching. I stopped playing baseball seriously, which in the end was a blessing. And then I went to music school at the University of Michigan, where I studied with Donald Walden, who's a Detroit legend. Also taught at Oberlin. He played with Aretha Franklin, and he's just an amazing teacher and mentor. And then I was really lucky, among many other great teachers at Michigan, I studied with Jerry Allen, who joined the faculty there my junior year. So that's kind of my music,
Yeah.
you know, coming of age, and I very much learned, in the world of jazz education, but being in Detroit or being near Detroit and having the influence of the Detroit scene, I was really lucky to learn from, the the generation and the community, older Black musicians who had really created the music, and got that firsthand, mentorship experience with them, which was fantastic.
So what was the first live jazz show or you saw that blew you away, that made you think, I want to do that one day?
Sure. I would every once in a while, maybe every couple months, go to the Regatta Bar in Boston, or in Cambridge rather.
Yeah.
And I saw a lot of great bands there because they brought in, really top of the line national acts. So I saw, I mean, the Kenny Garrett shows that I saw there really just blew
Yeah.
my mind. When I was in high school, I mean, I still love Kenny Garrett, but I loved Kenny Garrett back then, and I saw him live, and uh, the energy and the spontaneity. I remember seeing him and his band. I loved it at the Regatta Bar. You'd be sitting there and they would announce, welcome to the Regatta Bar. And the musicians would come onto stage, and usually there were very few, if any, words spoken, and the music would just start like that. And it was like this magical moment that at the time I didn't really understand. And I just remember Kenny Garrett going, two down. He didn't even say it, but he just said to his band, which is two down, one across, I think the first track on Songbook.
Yeah.
And starts with like this rubato moment, and then they go into the fast swing, and they just tore it up. I saw Dave Holland's bands there, his quintet there a couple times. I think one time with Chris Potter, one time with Antonio Hart. I did see around Boston, George Garzone, and was influenced by him and Jerry Bergonzi. Those are the two sort of like Boston tenors. When I was growing up, Lovano started teaching at Berkeley when I was in college, I think. But I saw a lot of great national acts there. I saw Herbie Hancock with Michael Brecker, Roy Hargrove, Brian Blade, and who's the bass player? That's terrible. Is it Christian McBride? I think it might have been Christian McBride or John Patitucci.
Okay.
Yeah, that band where they played a lot of Miles and Coltrane stuff, I think. I saw them live, which was amazing. I think that was more at a concert hall. I think it was at where the Boston Symphony plays.
Right on. So
Yeah.
let me ask you this. What gets you up every day? What motivates you to be a musician? What do you look forward to every day?
I mean, the honest answer is my son, who's a 2-year-old now, gets me up every day.
Yeah.
But if I can, when I was teaching, I would always get up before them. I'd be up at 5 and try to do some composing or some practicing or meditation before my family woke up. And I'm trying to get back to that now. What gets me up every day? I think it's still the moments in my favorite recordings. Not so much the sound of those moments, or like, oh, they played this chord or that tempo or this lick, but the feeling that I've always gotten, and it is some of the same moments in certain live recordings, especially, but the spontaneity and the rhythmic excitement and the give and take between musicians on my favorite jazz recordings and on my favorite, classical recordings, because I've gotten more and more into composition in my 30s. That's like really what I was focused on. And I started singing in choirs and writing for choirs. I started playing classical saxophone and writing for more chamber groups and stuff like that. Um, I am in a practicing phase right now, but I wouldn't say I'm in like I wake up every day to have that meditative 4 hours with my instrument and, reach my center. I have had that, and I am a, pretty disciplined person, and I love practicing. Um, I wouldn't say right now that's my vibe. I think now that I've moved to Los Angeles, we moved to LA this winter, at the end of December, because my wife is a writer. She's a playwright who had always written plays, but has been doing more for TV. So we're giving Los Angeles a try. I wanted to sort of pass off my band program to the next director. So we're here, and the social part of being a musician is my focus now. You know,
Yeah.
because I practiced a lot, I composed a lot, I performed as much as I could when I was teaching a lot in New York. But especially towards the end, when my son was born, and I was focused on passing on my program, like my social life was more as a teacher and as a father, and I did as much getting out as I could. Um, but in LA, I've really been able to, get out to shows and to jam sessions, 3 or 4 nights a week. I'm able to have sessions and rehearsals at my house, which I never dreamed of in New York. And not that LA is sparsely populated, and it's also a very expensive place to live, but we have a little more space here.
Yeah.
And because I'm not teaching here yet, I'll probably do different kinds of teaching, more private lessons, or maybe work with small groups of, like jazz combos or kids who want to study composition or whatever. But I'm not about to jump into a band program, director's job out here. Um, I'm able to socially, be more of a musician out here, which has been great. So I'd say the new relationships out here, and learning from those things, learning from jam sessions, learning from sessions at my place, learning from, just chatting with musicians, which is something that when I was in music school and right after music school, I did all the time. That's the life I was living, but I'm getting back to that now.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, why do you love this art form we call jazz?
Forgive me, these are great questions.
Yeah.
Just want a minute to think about it.
Yeah.
Because the way it makes me feel, and it's uh, I always loved music. My first loves were like, Nirvana and sort of grunge rock, which was like really exciting. And then I got really into hip hop and would, memorized all these lyrics of hip hop songs. And I also love literature and language, and I studied Italian, and jazz, and then I also love sports, and in some way I don't know why it is, but jazz is able to satisfy you know um, the physical part of it, obviously the rhythmic uh, aspect, that I love from hip hop, and the sophistication and the language. And I mean, there are so many reasons. I'd say the simplest answer is that, the way I feel when I listen to my heroes play, when I listen to Sonny Rollins play, when I listen to Joe Henderson, or I mean, all of the great saxophonists and masters of the music, um, and it's what makes me feel. And playing it myself, just listening to it is obviously wonderful, but playing it myself, and having these lifelong challenges of it's just so comprehensive. The harmonic aspect, the rhythmic aspect, the communication with other musicians, the composition part, uh you never run out of challenges. You never run out of things to learn. And I think one of the reasons I love teaching is because I love learning.
Yeah.
And I got to learn to play electric bass. I got to learn to play trombone. I got to learn to do things I never, play piano from the other side of the piano upside down because I had to demonstrate something and then run over there real quick. Like, um, so I love learning, and I think that music is just uh, now this is more my sort of music ed pitch to administrators, but music education is just an amazing um, sort of habitat for growth,
Yeah.
not just for kids, for adults too. Um, Whatever side of it you're on, composer or vocalist or transcriber or critic or whatever. Um, but yeah, I'm still driven, man, by this by the same, by the same by the same albums, by the same moments. I stay current and I listen to new stuff and I listen to my peers and I'm excited by new things that I hear. But in terms of like, my core motivation, it still comes from like when I was 11 or 12 and checked out from my local library the Sonny Rollins Live at the Vanguard, double album, and I you know heard the solo break on Night in Tunisia and was just like blown away, and I
Yeah.
and I heard I felt the same rhythmic excitement and the same like adrenaline from my hip hop listening, but there were all these other elements, um, and yeah, I just think it's a beautiful history, a beautiful culture, that I'm lucky to be a part of and to be, welcomed into it.
So at the end of the day, Jeff, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, fans, everyone on the bandstand with you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I'd like to say, that I'm a genuine player and that I really play for what I feel are, the right reasons. That I'm playing for my fellow musicians, that I'm playing for the people in the room, that I'm playing for, myself and my family, but also my teachers and you know, my heroes. Um, and I'd like to say that I'm the same whether I'm playing at my album release show in LA and I'm the focus of all the attention, or whether I'm um, you know playing on a New York City subway platform, which I did very often, actually became a really important part of my practice. Like, no better honest feedback than a random group of busy, grumpy people, who you have as kind of a captive audience, and uh, or whether I'm, directing a group of kids, and trying to get them to listen to each other, trying to play together. So yeah, genuine player. I definitely have, rather than, zeroing in on like jazz saxophone as a point in my life, have actually gone sort of the other direction, and like I said, developed other musical interests. So and teaching was great for that because it supported me and allowed me to not dabble, but allowed me to explore other things. Um, so I've become more of sort of a big picture person. As a band director, I started to really admire more people like Quincy Jones, or Dr. Dre, who have a way of making everybody feel comfortable, kind of getting the best out of themselves and of everybody else, or the right arrangement, the right soloist, the right feature. Um, I think about that with my writing. I think about that with my band leading. Um, so there are a ton of saxophone players out there. There are a ton of 30, 40-year-old long-haired white guy tenor players out there, like we're a dime a dozen. But I think my passion for learning, and I hope, genuine approach to music, um, that sets me apart, but that's kind of, you know, who I am. I like to think that the excitement and the joy that I feel playing or writing or listening is the same that I felt when I was, that like 11 or 12-year-old
Yeah.
kid, listening to Sonny Rollins. If you ever seen the musical performances on Sesame Street? Have you ever seen the Stevie Wonder,
Oh yeah, totally.
the the one where he plays Superstition?
Uh-huh.
It's like a really killing take, and there's this kid with long hair on the fire escape. There's the fire escape on Sesame Street, and he's just like head banging. It's during the musical interlude where they're just like grooving over, I guess E flat minor or whatever it is. Um, and he's just like going crazy. And like I would show that to my students, and because I was, I was a middle school teacher, I was like, quite strict and had
Yeah.
to run a tight ship. But I tell them like, that's me. Like
Yeah.
whatever else we do, like that's me. I'm just excited about the music,
Yeah.
however I can be involved in it.
I love it. So having your debut get out is a big deal. It's your
Yeah.
shout out to the jazz world. What are you ultimately hoping the listener gets from Pack Animals?
I'm proud of the ensemble sound and the give and take of the group. Santiago Leibson on piano, Eli Heath on bass, and Chase Elodia on drums were this like wonderful team for this project. Um, and I think listening to it now, there's a great give and take between the musicians and like honoring the moment, but there's also a really cool on each track, a cool commitment to each composition. Um, and uh, we all play on all the songs. It's the same instrumentation, it's the same people on all the songs. So there's not variety in that sense, but in terms of the way we um, improvise or the way we frame the improvisation on each track, or um, like who the lead voices are, or whether it's more melody and accompaniment or total counterpoint. I think there is variety on the album, and that the tracks kind of complement each other. Um, I My hope would be that the listeners' ears perk up and that they get something new from it each time they listen to it, and that they want to hear more. Because I definitely have more. I chose 8 of my tunes or 8 of my compositions, but I have more that I haven't recorded, and am meeting new people out here. I have a new quartet in LA that actually Eli, from the record, moved out to LA.
Yeah.
So he's in my LA group, which has been awesome to have that continuity. Um, but I think, my hope would be that people want to hear it live, or that people want to hear more, or that people want to um, uh, take a lesson with me if they're music students, or that they want to, talk with me if they're composers. It is, I wasn't thinking at all about the reception of this when I recorded it, really. I was just trying to get it down for myself before my son was born,
Yeah.
which I think in the end was good, because I was able to I approached it from just a purely musical sort of documentarian point of view. um, I didn't start to think about the reception until I talked to a publicist, about it. So, I just hope that people listen deeply to it, which is hard to do these days. So many things vying for our attention, and you know, music listening apparatus is no longer set up for entire albums, but it was developed as an album. Um, and Yeah, I just hope that their ears perk up, that they want to hear more, and that they find a way to stay in touch with me.
So speaking of, if anybody wants to pick up a copy or they want to catch you live, how do they do that?
Awesome. Yeah, so my website is still jeffwalton.nyc. And I also have jeffwalton.bandcamp.com. So Bandcamp, as I'm sure your listeners know, is the best way to support independent artists, especially the album, both the digital copy and also I'm prepared here,
Yes.
the hard copy, and yeah, I'm really proud of the artwork from my childhood friend, Carolyn Prin, who was always drawing animals. So once I
Yeah.
decided on Pack Animals, I
That's
got in
awesome.
touch with her. So yeah, you can order the CD, you can get a digital copy, and my website, jeffwalton.nyc, will have local shows in LA. I'm gonna be in New York the first week in September. Um, I don't have anything booked for that yet. Last time I was in New York, I did a release show there, and I also did a gig with another band with Jacob Sachs, Vinny Sbraza, and Peter Brendler at iBeam which was great. But I'm playing in Laguna Beach in for California people. I'm playing in Laguna Beach on August 31st with my quartet, and then I'm really excited. We're gonna try making it a monthly series at the venue where I did my album release. So that was at the Earl Gallery in LA. In Koreatown, this awesome, quirky, multi-art space run by a great guy named Michael, and he wants to bring jazz back to the Earl.
Cool.
And so we did our album release there in July, and then our next one's going to be September 24th at the Earl Gallery. I hope that this can eventually become a series where we have like my group and a guest artist. We've got to kind of figure out the back end there, but that's really exciting. A place to sort of have a residency, develop my music, not just as like a showcase, but month to month. And also the LA Quartet has vibraphone, not piano. Although Jake Chapman, who's playing vibes, he actually started as a pianist, so he has a really cool perspective. But it's a new thing out here, so if you can catch the LA group, you'll definitely be hearing new sounds or new takes on some of those songs, as well as new songs as well. But yeah, my website, jeffwalton.nyc, and Bandcamp, jeffwalton.bandcamp.com.
Right on.
To stay in touch.
Perfect. I will put that in the shows. Jeff, this has been great. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your story. I appreciate it, man.
Thanks so much, Joe. I really appreciate you.
Hey jazz fans, Joe Domino of Neon Jazz here. Proud to let you know about the triumphant return of the Kansas City Blues and Jazz Festival to Legends Field at the home of the KC Monarchs with a stellar lineup. Grammy-winning Stanley Clarke, Carl Denson's Tiny Universe, jazz master Bill Frisell, and KC luminaries Jackie Myers and Brody Buster. Tickets and more for this electrifying two-day event is found at monarchsbaseball.com, then click on special events. This October 3rd and 4th, join us as we bring magic and music back to Kansas City.